It is now Sunday, November 23rd. We are getting pretty close to 1 a.m. here on the East Coast, and that, of course, means it is just after a AEW pay-per-view. This one, Full Gear 2025, was hosted live at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. So this is Wrestling Night in America. I am your host, Brandon LeClair. I am joined, as I often am, by PWTorch columnist Greg Parks. Greg, it is great to have you here. Thanks.
Great to be here. Yeah.
We've gotten kind of used to doing these shows super late. For AEW, it's always a bit of both a marathon and a sprint with them. The matches come in rapid fire succession, and there are a lot of them. That was, of course, the case tonight. And actually, Pickens in the chat saying it's wrestling morning in America. I guess that is the truth, as we have often had occur with these AEW shows. This one a little bit like last month's, where there were 9 matches on the card, but we actually got a bonus half match on the main show because of it running over on the pre-show, on the kickoff show. Seems to be, we're 2 months in a row now. I don't know if that's something that they plan to do regularly, but we at least have 2 months back to back of that being the case. Greg, there is a lot to talk about. As I sort of already mentioned, 9 matches to go through. I figure we will do as we usually do and start things off with the most recent of matches, that being the main event for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. It was a steel cage match. It was champion Hangman Adam Page defending against Samoa Joe, again, inside a steel cage. This one, a short main event by AEW standards, only 14 minutes, and Samoa Joe is your winner and the new AEW World Champion. Greg, if you had asked me to pick one match on this card that I was absolutely sure of the outcome, I would have told you this one, and I would have been wrong. Where did you fall there?
I mean, this is, I think you're right, in terms of the surprise factor of it with Samoa Joe winning. I'm not sure there were a lot of people who had that on their bingo card tonight. I was surprised that they opted to get a second month out of Joe, quite frankly, after Page's win the last time. So, I was even questioning whether this was a pay-per-view worthy main event to have a second time around. I thought that there was too much blood on the show. But again, and I'm gonna be all over the place here in talking about the main event, but sure. Clearly there are philosophical differences that Tony Khan and I have about how to present a professional wrestling pay-per-view. I would not go as long as they do. Tony Khan clearly hears the criticism and disagrees with it, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that we're going to stop bringing it up, especially when it truly does hamper one's enjoyment of the show. And, objectively, the crowd reaction. I thought the crowd at times later on in the show was muted, as they tend to be on these longer shows. So it's not as if just, we're old men yelling at clouds here. There is a tangible negative connection to the show going longer. Not every time and not every crowd, but that is the case. And I thought that was the case at times tonight. The other philosophical difference he and I have is I believe there can be too much blood on a show. And Tony Khan does not agree with that. We've seen at times pay-per-views go overboard on the blood. Tonight, I thought, was one of those nights, culminating with a tremendous gash along the forehead of Samoa Joe that was quite gruesome.
Yeah.
And this is not, again, this is a criticism that Tony Khan has heard. It's not as if they're whispering behind his back about this. He's someone who is quite online. So I'm confident he's heard the criticisms along these lines. And obviously he disagrees. And that's fine. I just wish they would kind of spread those matches out a little bit. I thought that they had to back with Moxley and O'Reilly, back to back with Kyle Fletcher and Mark Briscoe. That was a bit much. And then, the main event, I thought was fine. You had the cage match in terms of, keeping people out, whatever. We can complain about the stipulation and the tropes of people interfering in cage matches too much. It happens too much. And it's not just an AEW problem. It's a WWE problem. I thought the Hook turn that led to Samoa Joe's win was, I don't want to say anticlimactic, but I don't know that Hook is a big enough star for his turn to feel like it should lead to a major title change of this magnitude. Because I do feel like Adam Page was really finding his footing as a babyface champion. I thought he was doing a very good job. And to turn to Samoa Joe, who over the last few months has been built as the Samoa Joe of old, not the mid-card Samoa Joe that we had come to know and love in AEW. He had been built up as something more, but he didn't really feel better than Adam Page at any particular turn. And to have Hook turn and lead directly to the finish, I felt did not fit. I felt that was too small of a thing that was played up to be bigger than it felt to me as a fan watching this. If I take a step back and just talk about the show in general, I think AEW pay-per-views are all good. I think the only difference is what range of good are they? Are they just good? Are they great? Are they one of the best ever? I think that's the true range of AEW pay-per-views. And
in fairness too, they deserve to be critiqued on a significant scale because of the cost. I mean, these are not cheap shows.
True. Yeah, that's another factor to play into it as well. So I think there were just a lot of little things. I thought the show was good. Like I said, it was a good show. I thought there were a lot of little things that kind of bugged me along the way and that I just personally was not as into. And the Hook turn is one of them, and people in the chat may disagree, and that's fine. I mean, that's why we have this discussion to give our opinions, right? This is a very subjective thing that we're looking at here tonight. So and Derek in the chat is saying, I don't think Hook needs to be a big star to help Joe win the title. Fair enough, but I mean, the turn was played up as this huge deal. And again, I don't think Hook is at that level. Is his turn a big deal? Sure, but I don't think it's at the main event of a pay-per-view leading to a title change.
They've also only largely presented that story on Collision, a show that very few people watch.
There you go. So again, good show. There's a lot of really good wrestling on the show. There's a lot of, I thought in terms of the booking decisions, I agreed with a lot of them. The main event was the one that really stood out to me as I wasn't really a big fan of it. The question is, okay, how much does that take down the show in my eyes? And it's not a lot, but I've seen reaction online that speaks very highly of the show that I disagree with. Like I said, good show, bordering on great show, but there were a lot of little things that just kept it from getting to that point for me.
Yeah, I think that in the pantheon of really, really impressive AEW pay-per-views, I have this pretty low in my rankings, and I don't subscribe to any particular method of ranking these shows. I mean, we kind of, we do the arbitrary thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle thing on this show, but I don't give it much thought in terms of comparing to other events. In hindsight, I think that AEW as a whole is a stronger product now than it was, say, a year ago. And I think that usually the shows reflect that. But this show to me really felt kind of second rate in terms of if we're just looking at the run of AEW pay-per-views. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that to me, as much as I like Samoa Joe, as much as I respect Samoa Joe, and as much as I like Hangman Adam Page, that main event did not feel like a main event worthy angle to me. And in fact, last month they didn't close the show with the world title match, partially because they had a big blood feud with Darby Allin and Jon Moxley, but partially because it was very clearly a B-level feud. And coming into this match, yeah, they had done the work to turn Samoa Joe heel. So you have a more traditional babyface heel matchup between the champion and challenger. And they had introduced some new elements to the story. But it still felt to me like a B-level main event, not unlike the way that, say, Jon Moxley and what was it Jay White last year that they did at Full Gear, or maybe the year before that just didn't feel up to par with some of these other events. And granted, I give AEW some leeway because there's a lot of injuries right now in that company. They're piling up. And I don't want to criticize them too heavily for booking a main event like Joe versus Joe in a cage, which I think works perfectly fine. But I do have some concern, I think the way you do, Greg, about moving the title to Joe the way that they did. I am fully with you on the discussion about Hook. Hook, to me, does not feel like a character that has been presented strongly enough, has been featured regularly enough on Dynamite to make sense as a major hook point, no pun intended, in the main event of a pay-per-view that causes your top championship to change hands. Mm-hmm. And it's a big swerve. I mean, I started off this conversation by saying, of all the matches, if you had asked me to predict, I would have felt most confident about Hangman retaining here. Mm-hmm. So it's a swerve, and it's going to get people talking. But this is the second Hangman Adam Page title run now that we've seen ended rather unceremoniously. And you have to kind of wonder at what point he's going to be allowed to just be the guy and just kind of run with it. Because if we're looking at his defenses since winning the championship, there just really isn't a lot of meat on that bone. He really didn't get an opportunity to really showcase himself against, I don't want to say main event talent, because I think Samoa Joe is a main event level talent, but within the AEW system, there's a certain level of expectation for match quality and for quality of opponents. And I think that I don't think Page really got a chance to show himself at that level with the championship. And that's unfortunate. I'm torn because I think with all AEW pay-per-views, there is a basis, there's a ground floor, and the ground floor is great wrestling. And so if you are someone who views storylines as secondary, who just wants 4+ hours of great wrestling, and that is worth $50 to you, then you got your money's worth tonight. And you will continue to get your money's worth every month when AEW puts on a $50 pay-per-view, because they're not going to let you down in terms of great wrestling. But they have great wrestling on Dynamite, and that's not a $50 show. These events continue to feel to me like both a sprint and a marathon, with a lot of booking decisions that I typically don't align with or don't agree with. I find myself feeling at odds with a lot of Tony Khan's proclivities. I think the way that you do, Greg. And a lot of this show, as we'll get into, kind of felt like all of those little nagging things that I dislike about the way AEW presents its product, all of them kind of came to a head in one way or another in this show, in one match or another. It's it's uh, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see a roster that talented and a product that has as much potential as it does not present what I think is the best product that they could present. But I also recognize that a lot of what they do just isn't for me. It's not made for me. It's made for, as they like to call it, the quote unquote sickos. Greg, you've talked a little bit about the blood in the main event, the blood in the other matches. I took issue with that as well. What did you think of the quality of the match here, particularly the relatively short length by main event AEW standards?
Well, it wasn't what we typically come to expect from AEW main events, but when you've got a 9-match card and the other 8 matches kind of do the heavy lifting in terms of really good wrestling, you can kind of get away with a main event that is more smoke and mirrors, bells and whistles, blood and gore, the way this one was, as opposed to, a 4.5 star match that we come to expect from AEW pay-per-views. So I think that was kind of the deal behind that main event is they probably felt there was enough other stuff, big stuff going on, that putting a match that wasn't going to get the usual length that it gets, that wasn't going to be the usual quality that we've come to expect, the other parts will make up for it. And one other thing I want to mention before we kind of move off the topic or get on to another part of this is I am intrigued about Swerve Strickland's return and him standing next to Adam Page at the end of the show, because when he left, he had a rather tenuous relationship with Adam Page. And now you've got two guys who have a claim to getting an AEW world title shot. Adam Page for the way he lost the title based on the hook turn and interference of the ops in this one. And Swerve Strickland, he comes back and he thinks, okay, Adam Page lost. Let me be at the front of the line based on everything that I've done over the last year in AEW. And so they both have, I think, pretty good claims to the next AEW championship. How does that play out and how does that affect whatever relationship they have right now? I think that's going to be the interesting thing to me. That's probably more so than Hook's heel turn, more so than even Samoa Joe winning the title. I think that's going to be the most interesting thing to me to see play out on TV over the next few weeks.
Yeah, they've done a good job with, these two guys went from burning each other or burning a house down, breaking into each other's house, like the stuff that I think a lot of us said just went too far, because it just what is next, what more can you do other than murder? It for a while there, it seemed as though there's no way for these two to ever coexist and have it feel realistic or believable. And I think that they've done the work over the last couple of years to get these two to a place where it feels like they could coexist. I don't think that they'll ever be friends, but I no longer feel like they can't be on screen with each other without ripping each other's heads off. We've gotten past that point, and I think it's a good thing overall. I'm intrigued too to see where they go with Swerve. Goodfella in the chat, saying that he expects Swerve to win the title soon, and they didn't want to run Hangman versus Swerve again, which I think there's some sense to that. But if that's what you're thinking, I hope there would have been a little bit more foresight to think, hey, this is exactly when we know Swerve is coming back, and this is when we want to have him win the title. And you do a little, you do a little bit more backwards booking to not put Hangman in what I think is a fairly precarious position. Not to say that I don't think that he won't be okay in the long run. I just think it's the second time you kind of cut him short on a babyface world title run. Where do you stand there, Greg? As far as Hangman goes, do you think this is leading to more of all three of them being involved in the title picture, or more along the lines of Hangman stepping aside to let Swerve kind of step in and be the next guy in line?
Well, your mind immediately goes to triple threat, right? Samoa Joe,
Right.
Adam Page, Swerve Strickland. I could see that scenario playing itself out. But again, I think that's the intriguing part for me. And that's why I'm so interested in that aspect of the fallout from the main event tonight. Is we're really unsure, because both men, as I stated, have a claim to the next world title shot. So who does it go to? How is it decided who it goes to? Do you just do Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland and say winner gets a title shot at Samoa Joe at the next pay-per-view? I believe it's Dynasty in December. So
World's End.
Just World's End. Okay. The uncertainty of it, I think is what's intriguing for me, and how we've seen their relationship develop in a very non-wrestling sort of way. It was very unique. And I think it was really a really cool way that it developed as time went on before Swerve got hurt. So you're kind of picking up where they left off there. And I'm really interested to see what that looks like, that in terms of the relationship between these two, as they both stake their claim for a title shot.
Yeah, I think it was interesting too that during the course of the match, before we move on from the match entirely, the amount of blood in this one. I wanted to touch on that. Greg, you kind of mentioned already, 3 matches on this show had copious amounts of blood. This one was the most violent of the bunch, which is kind of crazy to say, considering another involved a screwdriver being taken to the head multiple times.
When you outbleed a Jon Moxley match, that's saying something.
Yeah. And there wasn't anything super crazy in this. That's sort of the thing. They were just getting busted open on the wall of the cage. And it was visually striking. I mean, when you use the term just covered in blood, I mean, I think I wrote in my report for PWTorch, Samoa Joe's white elbow pad was stained completely red within like 5 minutes of this match starting. And of course, we'd later find out in hindsight, it was only going to be a 14-minute match. So they bled fast and they bled furious and continued to bleed throughout the course of the match. And that probably had something to do with why the match was only 14 minutes. They knew going in, if they're going to lose this much blood, they're not going to be out there for 30, 35 minutes. I would have been okay with this level of violence in this particular match being the main event that felt like it needed something a little extra if they hadn't gone so heavy in 2 other matches on this show.
Yeah.
I think that is where my issue comes in. By the time we got this level of violence, this level of blood, we're already desensitized to it because we've already seen it. And we've seen actions that were far more violent than anything that happened in this match. Yeah. And that kind of brings me to the dichotomy right now that exists between AEW and WWE. I like violence in my wrestling. I like blood in my wrestling when the situation calls for it. And you have the 2 biggest companies in North America who can't seem to strike a balance. You have WWE, who uses blood on the absolute rarest of occasions and almost never when the situation calls for it. We have 2 War Games matches next weekend, and I would bet no one is going to bleed in those things. And that makes that match look silly, because you can't talk about how violent and depraved those matches are and then have virtually nothing to show for it. And then on the other side of the coin, you have AEW, who will bring the blood in when it's warranted, and they'll also bring the blood in when nobody asked for it. So you're going to get your fill and then some. And I just wish that one of the two companies would strike a fine balance. But I am preaching to the choir and talking to the wall that is the two companies that certainly do not care what we have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of torn on the blood when WWE put a stop to blading, and not everybody, but there were a lot of people up in arms because these were the people who grew up, and some of their most memorable moments as a fan were the blood, whether it was Dusty Rhodes or Ric Flair or Steve Austin in the iconic picture of him bloody in the sharpshooter by Bret Hart. Those are ingrained in our memory. And I think a lot of fans were like, you're taking this away from us. This is how you get guys over. That's kind of what we were taught growing up on that kind of wrestling. And, I think as time passes, some things become passe. And I think mutilating yourself with a blade to draw blood, I was fine with WWE putting an end to that practice. I could understand where they were coming from. I understood that in the corporate world, sponsorships were more important than bleeding during a cage match and having to answer the question that fans have about how can you not have blood in a cage match or elimination chamber or anything like that. That being said, if they want to use it on the rare occasions when it's called for in an elimination chamber match, in a War Games match, when it makes sense, I'm fine with it. It is part of wrestling history, but I'm also fine if they just never did it again. So I don't feel like it's super necessary, but I understand that historically these certain matches have blood. And now you're saying, okay, we're having the same level of violence, if not more, and now there's no blood. How does that make sense? It's a different time, and I think sometimes that's the answer, whether we like it or not. And I do think WWE, it should be all or nothing. I think for WWE, either you don't do it at all, or you do it when they call for it, not even rarer than that. And I think maybe that's kind of what you're getting to. There's not that happy medium for WWE where they do it when they should, if they're going to do it at all. And clearly they've backed off the stance of not doing it at all. And it may be just, tippy top guys, which again, I'm fine with. I don't need blood in the mid card. Like I don't need Miz to draw blood in a match with Carmelo Hayes. Like, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. So if you trust Cody Rhodes to do it, or whomever is going to do it, that's fine. But you have to be consistent about it. If you're going to have a violent War Games match where there's a cage, and you've shown that you are willing to have wrestlers blade, then inside a War Games cage or an elimination chamber, that would be the time that it would make sense to do so. So just that consistency, I think, is what we're looking for.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you hit it there with, you don't want it in a random mid-card match. And AEW has done that and does do that. And I think that is part of the issue, is you become desensitized to it because it's not special. It's not special anymore. And I think it should be special, and I think it's more impactful when it's special, and it gets the situation over more when it's special. All right, Greg, let's march through this thing. Did you happen to watch any or all of the pre-show?
None of it,
tailgate brawl.
None
all right,
of it.
Perfect. Me either. So we do not have to talk about it. That is fine by me. The main show, though, kicks off with the CMLL World Trios Championship match, already technically in progress. Kazuchika Okada arrives backstage just moments before the show switches over to pay-per-view. I happened to catch the final couple of minutes of that and saw that. So the show actually kicks off with Okada coming to the ring to join his partners, Hechicero and Konosuke Takeshita. I did not cover the remainder of this match, so I'll just say in the end, Hechicero and some disagreements and some issues between the building tension between Okada and Takeshita winds up causing their team to lose this match. Mystico makes Hechicero tap out, and his team retains the CMLL Trios titles. Anything you want to talk about with this half opener?
Yeah, I am enjoying the slow burn of Okada and Takeshita and them being forced to kind of work together. Usually when one guy turns on another in a tag match, it's usually at the end. And here, like they were turning on each other and fighting with each other, and the match was still going on. And so I thought that was kind of fun. Like they'd fight with each other, like literally fight, and then they'd go back to like having to fight their opponents too, and then they'd go back to fighting each other. So I thought that was really cool. Not a great night for the Don Callis family. They lose this match, and Kyle Fletcher loses the TNT Championship. The Young Bucks win, but they basically turned down the invitation to join the Don Callis family. So. Rough night for Don Callis.
Derek Mitchell noting he's not a fan of the pre-show match starting the pay-per-view. Doesn't like the strategy. We saw it last month. I thought it was a novel concept last month. I don't think it's something that I want to see them just make a habit of doing every single month. Where do you fall there, Greg? Do you think this is going to become something that they're doing on a regular basis, or are they just kind of getting it out of their system here and we'll see it more sparingly going forward? Did I lose you? Greg? All right, so we lost Greg for a moment. Throw that comment up here from Derek. Not a good strategy, according to Derek, as far as having the pre-show match bleed over into the main card. I'll bring Greg back here. Greg, there's two of you now. Got to kick the other one out.
That's frightening. Nobody wants that.
Did you catch what I was asking you?
I don't know. My internet's having some trouble tonight, I guess, but it was something about the pre-show match bleeding over into the opener, right?
Yeah, Derek Mitchell in the chat saying he doesn't think it's a good strategy. I was just asking, do you think this is something they're going to kind of commit to doing every month, or they're kind of getting it out of their system, or?
I think it's good to do once in a while and just to change things up. I don't have a problem with it. I think it was really unique the way they did it last month. And I thought it started the show out on a really hot note. And it adds some realism. I mean, just like SmackDown just seems to end at the exact 2-hour mark every week. Like it's, if you want to give the impression that your show is not scripted, which is what we as viewers want to lose ourselves in this world, right? Then matches don't always end at the top of the hour. So that Excalibur can run down the card one last time before it goes into pay-per-view. So I'm fine with it. It adds a little bit of realism and kind of gets you lost in the world of wrestling for a few moments.
Yeah, I don't see it as a huge deal. I don't know that I would do it every month. I probably would have skipped this month. I mean, if you just introduced the concept last month and then you immediately go back to it, I think it sort of starts to feel like it's going to be a gimmick that they employ all the time. But I'm fine with using it when it makes sense. I think obviously you saw last month it was a situation where it involved FTR. This month it was involving Okada and Takeshita. So they're certainly at least reserving it for when they have stars involved in these pre-show matches. I don't think you'll see it if you have people who are further down the card. At least I hope that's the case. If
the purpose is to start the pay-per-view off hot, you probably want to avoid that.
Yeah. We'll move on to our first official match of the main card. It is Pac versus Darby Allin. This has become a bit of a grudge in the last few weeks. Pac is your winner in just shy of 17 minutes. What do you think, Greg?
Really good match for the most part. I really enjoyed it. Pac has come back, and my God, the muscles on that man. That was a surprise. I did not see that coming. But he is yoked up, and that the press slam he did on Darby Allin standing on the apron. It just looks so strange to see a man that size pressing someone over his head. You're just, you're used to the Hulk Hogan's and the Ultimate Warriors doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone the size of Pac is doing it, it looks unnatural. It doesn't look right. But that was cool as hell. A move
and
there.
And Darby bounced off of that floor.
Of course he did. I think the finish, as disappointed as I was to see interference play a role in the finish of a match like this, I think, Pac's a heel, and he said that he wanted to beat Darby Allin in a wrestling match, one-on-one, just the two of them. And of course, it doesn't go that way. He has his Death Rider friends interfere to get heel heat on him for saying he wanted a one-on-one match and then having them interfere. So I get that. But the match itself leading up to that was a lot of fun. These are two very good wrestlers. Sometimes we forget that Darby Allin is a pretty good wrestler outside of the garbage wrestling that he does, which can be very entertaining in its own right. But I think this showed that he's a compelling in-ring wrestler in addition to what he does outside the ring too.
Yeah, I was a little lower on this one. It didn't capture me the way I think it did you, Greg. I thought going in that we were going to see a specific. I don't know. I think I expected a little bit more in terms of straight wrestling between these two, given the way that they kind of built the match up and the way that Pac sold it as the style of match he wanted to work. It seemed to me like they were leading into a showcase of Darby Allin trying to show that he can go in a match like this versus just his typical hardcore brawling style. And I think he can. It's just they didn't really lean into that notion all that much. And ultimately it could have just been me misreading the angle that they were going for here. But I thought it was fine for an opener. Crowd was a little less into this than I anticipated, given how over Darby Allin is. And I think that is a theme that ran through the show. And it sort of predated even the fatigue, where I think it's very common with these AEW pay-per-views for you to get a fatigued crowd deep into the show. But tonight, it felt to me a little bit different, almost as though the crowd just was not buying into the angles and the characters as much as they may usually. Part of that could just be, New York, New Jersey market. It's a tough crowd. They might have been looking for more. Part of it could just be that it didn't feel like a lot of the matches on this show were pay-per-view worthy. They kind of felt like they were tossed on there. And we'll get into that as we go on.
I did get the feeling that wrestlers had to work a little harder to get this crowd into it. I think for the most part, they did get into most of the matches eventually, but I do think the wrestlers had to work a little harder than normal for an AEW crowd to get them into it.
There were a lot of they got up for the bigger spots like you'd expect. I think the thing that stood out the most to me was how much silence and sort of low hum murmur you could hear in the down parts, more so than usual. It was a crowd that was like kind of waiting with bated breath for that big spot. And so the in-betweens, the beat by beats of a lot of the matches just felt like the crowd was just sort of watching, respectfully. They weren't necessarily fully engaged. All right, let's keep rolling here. Match number 2, the four-way women's tag team match. The stipulation a little bit convoluted. The winner of this match gets to choose the stipulations for the semifinal matches in the women's tag team title tournament. Hope that makes sense to everyone. So Julia Hart and Sky Blue taking on Megan Bayne and her fill-in partner Marina Shafir after her full-time partner Penelope Ford has been injured, versus the Babes of Wrath. That's Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, and the timeless love bombs of Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa. The final team there, Toni Storm and Mina, your winners in just over 13 minutes. I thought this was pretty good. A little bit sloppy at times, but good action from four teams with wrestlers of varying comfortability in the ring and levels of talent. Crowd was super into Toni Storm, as you would expect, and really into Willow Nightingale, but it didn't feel like many of the other wrestlers in the match got much of a reaction. I thought it was a little curious that they built a good chunk of this around teasing the dissension between Megan Bayne, Marina Shafir, and the Sisters of Sin. After they were just teaming in Blood and Guts a couple of weeks ago, they seemed to really want to hammer home the notion that they were no longer getting along. And that felt a little out of left field to me, given that I don't see either team turning. So it doesn't make a ton of sense for them to, be beefing in any significant way. But Greg, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, my big takeaway was just how over Toni Storm was. And I know there are some pockets of fans online who are kind of over her gimmick and think it's time to move on to something else. But the live crowds, I think, for the most part, have still supported Toni Storm pretty vociferously as this character. So I can understand why Storm, why Tony Khan, why everyone in AEW is still continuing to back this horse, so to speak, because the live crowds love her. And so, you run with it until they don't love her anymore. And so
the Jey Uso, the Jey Uso thing.
Right.
Except I think Tony's an incredibly good wrestler. I mean, you can make the argument, of course, against Jey Uso. I don't think you can make that argument with Tony.
Yeah. So this is, you mentioned the stipulation. These are the four teams that I believe would have to be still alive in the women's tag team title tournament. So that brings you to kind of a booking quandary here, because you don't want to make any of them look weak because they're still alive. You want people to believe that they can win the tag team title tournament that they're still in and that they're in the semifinals of. So you got to make very sure that you book everybody pretty strongly coming out of this one. That's not easy to do when you got four teams involved. So there are intricacies that need to be adhered to here. Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa, I don't mind them winning. They're the biggest stars of this match, and we'll see what the stipulation ends up being. I can't think of one that offhand that it would be. So I guess we'll have to tune in Wednesday on Dynamite to find out. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It was a good match, but there were some parts that were sloppy, which you're going to get. You've got four women. A lot of them, they are on the low end of the experience totem pole, I guess I'll say. They're still a lot of them still kind of learning to work with each other. So that when you've got that many wrestlers in a match like that, that sort of thing is going to happen. But yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, and to the point, to your point too about Toni Storm, I think that it was a wise decision on Tony's part, or Tony Khan's part, to if he is sensing any sort of backlash, even if it's just on the internet, you cycle Tony out of the world title picture for a bit, and you get her to be the forefront of this brand new division that really needs star power in order to set it on the right course. And you have a natural partner for her in Mina Shirakawa, a team that the crowd is going to like and is going to gravitate to. It's just a really simple but a really effective and smart choice, booking wise, to move them into that role and ensure that this tournament that you're having for these new championships is going to be spearheaded by a character who is incredibly over with the crowd and is going to make it feel important.
Yeah, and I think the buzz was a lot louder for Jon Moxley back when people were saying, "All right, let's end the Moxley experiment. It's getting repetitive. There's no story here. It's just the same guys coming out the same every week doing the same thing." And Khan stuck with him. Like, he stuck with that Death Riders outfit. He stuck with Jon Moxley as a top star, did not change or anything like that with Moxley. And I think we've come back around. At least me, seeing what we saw tonight in the previous weeks with Jon Moxley, I'm interested in what he's doing. So that's Tony Khan has shown that he's not going to adhere to the online fan base that is calling for someone to be phased out or change their gimmick or anything like that. If he stuck by Jon Moxley, I think the buzz for Tony Storm is a lot less than it was for Moxley. So I don't see him, caving to that small percentage of fans that are weary of Tony Storm's act.
Yeah. We get a video package for the AEW World Tag Team title match after this, and a quick vignette from Big Stoke Productions. Stokely Hathaway enters, or now known as Big Stoke, enters with FTR for their tag team title match against Brodito. And FTR, your winners of this one, new World Tag Team Champions. They win it in about 20 minutes. Greg, I'll throw to you first.
Yeah, this is another one where I didn't really mind the result here. As big of a fan as I've been of Brodito, since they had that breakout match, I think with the Young Bucks on TV when they first started teaming together, I was really happy to see Tony Khan strap them up and put the belts on them. Thought they really deserved that. Thought they'd done really great work as a team. Sort of an odd couple team, I guess, in some ways. But I didn't mind FTR winning here and having them drop the titles to FTR here. I think it was a really good match. The one thing that I love about FTR, and I mentioned this on social media too during the show, is they come up with some really creative counters to moves that guys do all the time. And, you hear announcers talk about, oh, so-and-so scouted his opponent. And you could tell by what he did in the ring. I mean, FTR seems like they're scouting their opponents all the time, and it fits their characters. That's kind of their old school. That's what they do. They know what their opponent's strengths are,
so
and
smooth.
they are, and they're smooth in what they do. So those counters that look like they could be complicated, they pull off with ease. And so I love that about them. And so, I was okay with this. Really good tag team match. I know that there are going to be people upset that Brodito lost the titles relatively soon after they won them, but I'm okay with this result.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed Brodito and their run. It's been a breath of fresh air in the tag team division. I think it's an oddball pairing that really, really works and it has gotten over significantly with the crowd. I think when you have something like that, you just have to run with it. And it has gone a long way in reestablishing those tag team titles, which I think were down in the dumps for quite a while for AEW. With all of that said, I'm with you. I don't have any issue with putting the titles on FTR here. I think they've done great work. I mean, they were really good with Christian Cage and Adam Copeland when they were working with them back a few months ago. They've been really good as heels, really effective as heels. Like I mentioned, Greg, they're just so smooth in the ring. They're such a joy to watch in these big match situations. And when you're getting just a straight up tag team match with FTR on an AEW pay-per-view, you just know it's going to be good. Like there's almost just no way that they can go out there and have a dud. They're just so seasoned and so good at what they do as a tag team. And it's just incredibly fun tag team wrestling. And I thought that this was another entry in their long list of really, really good title matches. The last 5 minutes, especially the number of counters. I mean, could I have
the near falls at the end? I would say I would stretch that out the last 10 minutes or so. The near falls were fantastic.
Yeah, and could I maybe have done with, maybe one less major Bandito kick out, because it's just AEW does that sort of thing ad nauseum where, everybody hits their finish 50 times and you just kick out and kick out and kick out and kick out. And they were doing that to some extent with Bandito at the end, but for the most part, I thought it was just a lot of fun. The Shatter Machine counters that Bandito was pulling off, when Brodito ends up hitting the Shatter Machine themselves, the transition from the Shatter Machine to the power bomb and the elbow, just so many cool things that were in there. Sadler throwing up a comment just saying Bandito's finish is his most hated move in wrestling, the 21 plex. It is an odd looking move, and it's one of those where you're kind of thinking, well, really, it's just a German suplex with some pomp and circumstance. It shouldn't actually be all that effective. Greg, where do you fall on the 21 plex?
Yeah, if I had to criticize Bandito for anything, it's that. I think fans seem to give him a pass for it. They react really big to it. So it's just, it's one of those things like, some guys will do a normal move, but they'll add like a spin or a twist to it. And somehow that adds more power, or that is more debilitating to the person taking the move. And it's just, when you break it down, yes, it's really just a German suplex, but all the stuff beforehand must make it more devastating.
It's certainly nowhere near as terrible looking as the often complained about Alberto Del Rio corner stomp.
Oh, yeah.
It takes 3.5 minutes to set up and requires your opponent to actually lift himself into place. That is just terrible. People still do it, not as a finisher, and it's just just get rid of the move. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Match number 4. It is our Casino Gauntlet match for the new AEW National Championship. Lots of wrestlers end up being involved in this one. I'll run through them here. Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin kick off the match. They're later joined by Ricochet, Claudio Castagnoli, Orange Cassidy, Wheeler Yuta, Kevin Knight, Mark Davis, Speedball, Mike Bailey. And that rounds out the that doesn't round out the field. I may have just stopped. Matt Menard. Matt Menard got in there to face off with Daniel Garcia. So a couple more in there. 22 minutes, Ricochet, your winner. He becomes the first ever AEW national champion. Greg, what'd you think?
This is another one where I thought it made sense to have Ricochet win. He kind of got battered around by the Hurt Syndicate during the match, and he's been treated like a gnat, I suppose, by the Hurt Syndicate over the last several weeks. And to see him get the title here and kind of shove it in their faces, that's what being a heel is all about. And so I thought he's done a tremendous job as a heel. I really loved his work and his interactions with the Hurt Syndicate. I know some people are over it and they're ready for both sides to move on. But I thought that was a good call. I thought there were a lot of mini stories within this match that we saw work themselves out. I still felt like this match was a little scattershot a little bit. Disjointed maybe is a better word for it, even with all those stories going on, maybe because of all those stories going on. It felt a little disjointed to me. I didn't think it was as good as some other Casino Gauntlet matches that we've seen in the past. But that being said, I thought the end result with Ricochet winning was memorable. First national champion, whatever that means, I guess at this point is another championship. But he's got something to brag about, and as an annoying heel, I'm sure he'll do a great job bragging about it.
Yeah, I'm vehemently opposed in principle to introducing a new championship, especially on the men's side. I think that this is going to be another title that just kind of floats around the mid card and doesn't hold much weight or meaning. I groaned when they said that they were introducing it. I groaned when I saw it. I groaned when they had the match. I just think that AEW is loaded with useless titles, and they would be a significantly better promotion if they scaled back, and especially if they stopped featuring other companies' titles on a regular basis. With that all being said, match was fine. I'm with you. I thought it was on the lower end of Casino Gauntlet matches, which I have plenty of complaints about in and of itself. I think it's kind of a ridiculous concept, but I do concede that the crowd seems to really enjoy them and they can be fun at times. But this was mostly a mix of random guys, a lot of Death Riders. You had just Orange Cassidy from the conglomeration, or if you count Roderick Strong, I guess he's in there too. You have the early attack from Ricochet and Gates of Agony on Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. They spend a good portion of Dynamite building up the fact that they're going to have Lashley and Benjamin square off for the first time in AEW. And then we don't really get it because Ricochet enters so quickly. So that was a bit of a letdown to me for them to not go there at all, though I guess I understand why. But I'm with you. I mean, if anybody has to win it out of the field that they threw out there, I'm cool with it being Ricochet. He's done good heel work. I think that he can I think that he can be a fun character with a championship to his name. The rumor was that this is supposed to be a title that is taken to other promotions. So does that indicate that Ricochet intends to work at other promotions? Are they going to send him out on the road, or is this just going to be another mid-card title? I'm not sure.
Sometimes the intent of these titles is not necessarily fulfilled.
And maybe this one will be different. Maybe it will not be. I don't know. I don't know that I like it any better if it is taken out on the road, and that is something that we see on a regular basis. I don't know that it changes my opinion on the whole thing. But that is at least the intent. Anything else you want to add about this one?
Yeah, I mean, if it does go out and it is defended in other promotions, look, the one complaint we have about these titles is none of them stand out from each other. And so if you've got a title that does stand out in this way, that it's one that is taken to other promotions, unlike the other titles that AEW has, then I give AEW credit for having it stand out from the other titles that they have in the company. Now, that doesn't mean they still don't have too many, but at least they're making an effort to differentiate it from the other mid-card titles that otherwise would feel exactly the same as this one.
Sure. Match number 5. We have Kyle O'Reilly versus Jon Moxley. The no holds barred match. It's also our first of the 3 very bloody affairs on this card. First of 3 sort of no DQ variations matches. Kyle O'Reilly, your winner. A little bit surprising here. Just over 19 minutes. Moxley gives O'Reilly a nod of respect after the match, but he then gets really upset when the officials are tending to O'Reilly in the ring and checking on his arm that Moxley worked over during the course of the match. So Moxley returns and beats the crap out of O'Reilly with the help of the Death Riders. Orange Cassidy and some other conglomeration members end up helping O'Reilly to the back after the match. I like this one a lot. The tolerance as far as the level of blood here probably varies. I wasn't fully desensitized to it at this point in the night because it was the first time that we saw it. So it didn't stick out to me at the time, though the fork stabs are obviously nothing to scoff at. I at least appreciated that there's history there as far as the use of the fork goes between O'Reilly and Moxley. So it wasn't just introducing a
even
utensil
saying
for the
that
sake of
phrase
it.
is just so strange.
I know. Yeah, there's precedence there for stabbing your opponent with a kitchen utensil. I think what I liked about this one primarily is how much technicality there was to it, despite how violent it got.
My internet is really wanting me to go to bed. It is really it's really giving me a hard time tonight. So I'm going to imagine that you just threw it to me to talk about this match because I didn't hear.
I did, but
so I think you said at the outset of this show, if you had to, whatever your phrasing was, if you had to bet that one match finish to one match or a winner to one match, you would bet Adam Page in the main event. I think I would have bet Jon Moxley in this match. Because he's been losing quite a bit on TV, including to Kyle O'Reilly in the War Games match. He lost by count out to Roderick Strong. So I thought, this is where Moxley gets things turned around. He gets his win back against O'Reilly. He's off and running, doing John Moxley things, But instead, we keep going down the path that Moxley's been going down, where he's losing, he's tapping out. There seems to be some level of doubt creeping in. And all the while, you're making another star in Kyle O'Reilly for beating a guy the level of John Moxley. Leveling up the way Kyle O'Reilly is doing is only going to help him. And especially with the blood and the imagery that's going to be attached to that match tonight, and that win for important for him. And so, I think there might be a situation where the Death Riders, do they start to doubt John Moxley as their leader with the losses that he is accruing? Is there going to be some sort of coup inside the Death Riders, or an attempt by a Pac or a Claudio Castagnoli? How much losing from their leader are they going to put up with before they do something about it? And I think that might be the next chapter of what we're seeing here, because obviously, they could have done the situation where Moxley loses a couple times, he has a crisis of doubt, and then he gets back on track here. But they're keeping him down this path, and they're doing it for a reason. And I wonder if we're going to see the next chapter with the Death Riders occur, where it is some questioning of Moxley's leadership here, given his losses.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about Moxley and the direction there. I'm glad that they are not just making these losses meaningless. The fact that they're drawing so much attention to the fact that he's on a losing streak, and not just a losing streak, but a streak of giving up, just plainly quitting during matches and tapping out. I think that they're telling a compelling story. I'm with you, Greg, in that this is maybe the first time I've been compelled by the Death Riders since the transition from Blackpool Combat Club into the Death Riders. I'm enjoying.
It was a slog. It was a slog there for a few months.
Yeah, and the title run. I went on record many times on this show saying that the title run was ruining my enjoyment of the company. I just thought that it was a chore, and to think that we've come full circle to have Moxley be an entertaining character at this point in this same role without really changing the personality, I think is a testament to him. At no point was I arguing that John Moxley is not talented or shouldn't be in the main event, but what they were doing with him, to me, just felt like an insurmountable slog. And I'm glad we're out of that chapter. And I'm really intrigued. I'm intrigued with where they're going with this. I think I am on the same page as you, Greg, in that this leads to the Death Riders turning on Mox at some point, no longer trusting him as their leader. As far as the match goes, I'll just finish what I was saying, that I was really impressed by the technicality here. Like the level of violence was one thing, but it was violence that was not just. It wasn't just violence for the sake of, I'm going to stab you with a fork. It was, I'm going to stab you with a fork while I'm trying to position you for this submission hold. There was a very clear sense of purpose to everything that they did here. And I thought that was a nice breath of fresh air for a no-holds-barred match. It was unlike what we would typically see, in that both of these guys were really hell-bent on trying to get the other guy to submit, not just pin. Derek Mitchell saying he thinks that they may turn on Mox at World's End. I think that's a strong possibility. Goodfella saying that Moxley owes some pins to people after the run with the world title. I think that's probably happening to some extent right now.
Yeah, and I do think the uniqueness of a wrestler the level of John Moxley, setting aside all the Death Rider stuff and how this makes the Moxley character interesting. A wrestler the level of John Moxley, you just don't see them submitting as many times as he has done, losing as many times as he has done. I mean, you just don't really see it with this level of depth. You know, we've seen losing streaks before, and it's just, oh, this guy's going through a losing streak, whatever. But with this level of depth and, you know, the doubt that creeps in with Moxley and the questions that he has to answer and the promos that he cuts after the losses, I think has really made him intriguing. And again, part of the reason it's intriguing is because this is a former longtime world champion of AEW who's still at the top of the card, and he's losing to the Kyle O'Reillys and Roderick Strongs of the world.
Yeah.
That's the interesting part to me as well.
Yeah, for sure. It was one thing for him to take a fall to, you know, to Darby Allin, who clearly they see something in as a main event guy, but Strong and O'Reilly are certainly not presented at that level. So to see that, it means I don't necessarily think it helps Strong and O'Reilly, and I think it's a good thing for their trajectory in the company. But I think it's more telling of what they're trying to do with Moxley overall.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, how do they capitalize on Kyle O'Reilly now? He's got 2 major wins over Jon Moxley. Is this a Moxley story and not an O'Reilly story? So O'Reilly doesn't really go anywhere from here, or do they try to capitalize creatively on it and move O'Reilly up the card somewhat?
One of the biggest issues that Kyle O'Reilly has had for his entire mainstream wrestling career, both in AEW and WWE, is that he has terrible theme music. And sometimes that holds guys back. I mean, it just
it
one
is
of those
curse.
things. Yeah. All right. So we are on to match number 6, the TNT Championship no disqualification match. Kyle Fletcher with Don Callis taking on Mark Briscoe, a rematch from last month's Wrestle Dream pay-per-view where Kyle got the win in a very good near 30-minute or over 30-minute match. I can't remember exactly. Briscoe is your winner here, becoming the new TNT Championship in just under 25 minutes. This was the second extremely violent match in a row. We had no holds barred in the Moxley and Kyle O'Reilly match, straight into no disqualification between Mark Briscoe and Kyle Fletcher.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, no.
They're titled different things, but it's basically the same stipulation, right?
Yep, they are the same thing. I did like that during the no holds barred match. I don't know if you picked up on it, but they were trying to talk about like specific holds that would not be legal in a regular wrestling match, but because it's no holds barred, they could do them. So that's how they were differentiating, except for the fact that in a no disqualification match, you could also use the normally barred holds.
Yes.
They tried, but not an effective try.
I appreciated that, and then they brought out the fork, and we're like, I guess that's a hold that's usually barred. You know, the fork. To the forehead.
I think it was Bryan Danielson too, who was trying to make the distinction because stuff like that bothers him.
Of course.
But Danielson joining the commentary team for the second half of the show tonight, something that he did not do last month at Wrestle Dream, and I really, really enjoyed Danielson on commentary. Where are you at with him, Greg?
Yeah, I like him. His enthusiasm is genuine. Yeah. He adds a layer of knowledge. Kind of fills in the gaps, I think, with Tony and Excalibur. You know, Excalibur's got so much on his plate. God bless him. Like, calling the match is just a small part of it. He's got to hype I Drink. He's got to hype what's coming up on Dynamite and Collision and the next pay-per-view and all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, Tony is kind of a fan watching, and it's like, wow, that's great. And oh my gosh. And he's just kind of reacting to what he's seeing, which is fine. You know, he's like the fan, you know, your uncle sitting next to you watching it with you. But Brian is there to give kind of the technical analysis and fill in the gaps like that. So I appreciate what he does.
Yeah. I like the match. I thought it was maybe a notch below last month in the way that I thought last month showed off a really different side of Mark Briscoe that I don't think we get to see all that often. I feel like Briscoe's wheelhouse is very much this style, the hardcore match. And last month we got a very different side of him, and showed off that he can really do the more technical, beat by beat traditional wrestling match at a very, very high level with Kyle Fletcher. So I thought that was cool for its uniqueness, but I thought that this was a really strong match. Felt like it was probably Briscoe's to take, given the added stipulation that had he lost, he would have been forced to join the Don Callis family. But that is, of course, not what happened. He does end up winning the TNT title here. I think it's a good championship for him to hold going forward, and I hope that this is a moment to catapult Kyle Fletcher up the card.
Felt like the blow off to this feud that's been going on for a while now.
Yep.
And I think, this level of violence is befitting the blow off to this particular feud. So I'm okay with it in a vacuum, but again, it's the back-to-back with Moxley and O'Reilly is, I guess, what I had a problem with it. I would have simply moved this one to earlier in the show, probably to separate them a little bit. But yeah, again, Don Callis family, bad night. Kyle Fletcher losing here. I'm a big fan of Kyle Fletcher, but I understand Mark Briscoe winning. I had no interest in seeing Mark Briscoe being forced to be a part of the Don Callis family, since that sort of storyline very rarely works because it just doesn't make any sense. Like you can't really force someone to be a part of a group. And like, why would you want, other than maybe the humiliation of it, why would you want someone who very clearly does not want to be on your team and could be at worst sabotaging your team from the inside? Like what purpose does that serve for you? I don't know. Maybe it's just ego for Don Callis, but anyway, I had
no interest. Too big already.
Yes, I know. I had no interest in seeing Briscoe a part of that. So I'm glad he ended up winning the title. And this is, I think it's a big deal outside of just Mark Briscoe, the character. This was a guy who was once banned by TNT from appearing on the network when Tony Khan bought ROH and tried to get the Briscoes on TV. So this is a big moment for him, in terms of that as well. And I think that probably feels good for him, and I think it probably feels good for Tony Khan too to come around to this, to having him win this particular championship. But yeah, all good things. Hoping for the best for Mark Briscoe. This does seem to be a little bit more investment in Mark Briscoe than we've seen before, where he's been treated as kind of a guy who can go out and put on a 15-minute match on TV and then lose. It seems like we've kind of grown out of that version of Mark Briscoe, which is a good thing because that was underutilization of him, I think. So looking forward to see what happens next.
Yeah, Goodfella and Derek Mitchell not big on Bryan Danielson on commentary. A little surprised. You heard it here. Argue with Greg. He'll be in the chat. All right, match number 7: Young Bucks, Nick and Matt Jackson, and Josh Alexander of the Don Callis family take on Jurassic Express and Kenny Omega in a $1 million trios tag match. Don Callis, no surprise, staying out on commentary for this one. Goes about 19 minutes. Young Bucks and Josh Alexander win this one. Big story here is the post-match angle. Kenny Omega looked like he legitimately tweaked his ankle early in the match, but I'm not going to say that with a ton of conviction because they built a large portion of the match around working on that injured ankle. But man, if Kenny was just selling, he was doing a exceptional job at selling because he looked like a guy who was legitimately having a hard time moving around the ring at times. He definitely looked like there was a hitch in his step. So I'm not sure how much legitimacy there is there to that injury. Maybe it was just a very slight tweak, and they built the crux of the match around it, and he decided to play it up. I'm not sure, but that's what stood out to me in the match itself. Post-match angle is the big story, though. You have the Don Callis family rushing to attack Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express after the match. The Young Bucks are leaving with Don Callis, and sort of discussing whether or not they're going to join the family. They, of course, have won their share of $1 million, and they see the beatdown happening on Omega. And despite Callis's pleas to the contrary, the Bucks run to the ring and they fight off the Don Callis family. They shake hands with Jurassic Express, and they give Kenny Omega a hug. And we see the reformation in some fashion of the Elite. Greg, go ahead.
This is one of those things where I diverge from AEW a little bit. I could not care less about the Young Bucks and their relationship with Kenny Omega and the will they or won't they turn back babyface like that. It just didn't interest me. It didn't feel compelling to me. I've gotten a good chuckle out of the Young Bucks being broke and the things that they've done, but it's just very surface level. It's nothing that like feels like it's earned my investment into that relationship with the others. And so I felt nothing when the Young Bucks won. I felt nothing when Don Callis was trying to drag them up the ramp and leave Kenny Omega to be attacked by Josh Alexander. I felt nothing when the Young Bucks came to their rescue. And Kenny Omega ended up hugging them. So, I totally understand if you love the Elite and you are big Young Bucks fans and wanted to see them turn back babyface and wanted to see the Elite reformed. But none of it rang true to me. None of it. I didn't feel invested in any significant way in it. So this is another one of these, kind of like the main event where I just didn't have any interest in a hook heel turn or like that didn't matter as much to me. This kind of felt the same way.
Sadler and Goodfellow with you. Neither invested in the reunion either. I'm indifferent. I wouldn't say that I'm excited about it. I think that I don't like the money concept that AEW has utilized frequently. I think it is more of a novel concept, more of an acceptable idea once you introduce the Broke Bucks gimmick, the idea that they would regularly want to wrestle or need to wrestle for money. I got some sort of I got some laughs out of what the Bucks have done, which I guess is more than I can say for how I felt about the Succession-esque heel gimmick prior to. I mean, there was a time where I think the Bucks kind of had go away heat with a lot of the fan base, and certainly with me. I just didn't want to see them anymore. I think that the gimmick had run its course. This version of them is at least entertaining. It does feel beneath them if we want to talk about being an all-time great tag team. I think it's a little unbecoming, but at the same time it fits with the sort of the brash, sarcastic style that we've seen from them over the years. I think the crowd is interested in seeing the Bucks and Kenny Omega. I know Omega's been talking more openly about retirement lately, and so if that is something that's on the table for him in the next couple of years, I mean, I guess it makes sense that you'd want to have this go around with your friends again. I continue to just feel like Kenny Omega is going to go down as one of the great misses in AEW history. I mean, when the company launched, it felt like they were going to largely be built around Kenny Omega. And before too long, it sort of became clear that that's not what he envisioned. And it never really seemed like he wanted to be the guy. And he's never been the guy with them. So he's felt like a secondary character for a long time. He still gets the big legacy pop, but it doesn't feel like we're ever going to get the tip top shape Kenny Omega that I think everybody thought we were headed for when AEW launched 6+ years ago now, and that's too bad. But I love watching Kenny Omega wrestle. I'll take what I can get, but Yeah, I'm indifferent about a reunion here.
It does feel like, it'll be one of the great what ifs if AEW had been able to build around Kenny Omega, but a lot of it was out of their hands with the injuries, with the
Mhm.
other things that he had going on medically, that they just couldn't. I mean, there were long stretches where they just didn't have him. And that's been the case for almost the entirety of the 6 years AEW has existed.
Yeah.
And so, I do agree with you. There, it did feel like, and maybe it's his personality, I don't know, but it did feel like he never wanted to embrace
Yeah.
being the guy, and whether it was
Mhm.
because he knew the injuries from New Japan weren't going to let him, or whatever the case may be. But I just think he has kind of a different personality, and Wade always brings this up, when Kenny's doing something personality focused on AEW TV. He's a different cat, I think.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and those guys, not everybody is made to be the top star.
Mhm.
And, maybe Tony Khan went in with the intention of making Kenny Omega the top star. And then he realized, oh, we need to buttress this with guys the viewers recognize from WWE. And then maybe Kenny got bumped down a little bit for the early ratings purposes and things like that. And it just never materialized the way that maybe everybody from the outside looking in thought it was going to be. You thought you get this guy from New Japan who's the big star there, putting on 6-star matches. What this is, he is the embodiment of what Tony Khan wants AEW to be. So of course he's going to be the top star. He's an
Mhm.
EVP, that sort of thing. But it just never happened. The Young Bucks, back to that for one real quick before we move on to the next one. It does feel a little bit like the Cody verse in that the Young Bucks
Yeah.
are kind of doing their thing, and they're EVPs in real life, and they're having fun doing their own thing. Like, whether or not it makes AEW money, whether or not it makes sense, or is entertaining, or gets to any real end, they're out there, they're having fun in the twilight of their careers. And maybe there's something to be said for that, but that's certainly what it feels like.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Goodfellas saying he's ready for another Bucks versus FTR round. And I think that raises a point that I'm certainly in agreement with, and one I've made many times, in that the Bucks wrestle like baby faces, whether they're baby faces or heels. So
Mm-hmm.
I tend to just prefer them as baby faces, because
Mm-hmm.
even though I think there is like a smarmy nature to their personalities that works well as a heel, as soon as the bell rings, they just have to drop it, because they refuse to edit their style in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
They're never going to not be the Young Bucks in the ring, and their style is just so conducive to being a babyface tag team that I think the designation just makes way more sense,
Yeah.
especially at this point in their career. Derek Mitchell too, raising a point, just saying that the Bucks and Kenny haven't been as hot as they were in other companies. And of that original group that came into AEW, Hangman Page is really the only one that's grown as a character. I think that's largely true. I mean, the Bucks have tried different gimmicks, but they're the same guys, and Kenny's the same guy. Kenny's doing the same thing now that he was 6 years ago. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he is who he is.
Yeah.
All right, one more match, Greg. The semi main event for the AEW Women's Championship. Chris Statlander, Mercedes Moné. Monet coming to the ring with her 13 belts. Statlander coming to the ring from a crashed spaceship, so paying homage to that original character of hers. Chris Statlander, your winner. She retains the Women's World Championship in just over 23 minutes. I don't know where you'll fall here, Greg, but this was my favorite match of the night by a considerable margin.
Wow.
I just thought these two were excellent. I've been waiting for Chris Statlander to have a really big moment on pay-per-view where she can shine. And her wrestling has always sort of done the talking for her. She is not a great promo. She's a little bit awkward as a character. I don't think that they've ever really found their footing with her. I still don't think they've necessarily found their footing with her. I think she is another character, someone like Kyle O'Reilly, for example, who suffers from having really bad theme music. It's incredibly generic. It doesn't fit her, and it sort of ruins her initial pop. So that's something I wish that they would change in a hurry. But Mercedes Moné continuing just her string of these excellent main event level matches. A couple of highlights here, one in particular being the 3 amigos that turned into the 14 amigos. Mercedes hit 14 consecutive suplexes on Chris Statlander, one for each of her championships, and then an extra for the women's world title that she hoped to win. But it was not to be. Statlander retains, finally hitting Saturday Night Fever. Story of this match was Mercedes just relentlessly working over the shoulder and arm of Chris Statlander that she injured early in the match. There were a lot of really unique holds and counters to holds. There was some great psychology with Statlander being unable to pick Monet up in the middle portion of the match because her arm was just too injured. Thought they did a really good job telling that story. I thought commentary sold it well, especially Bryan Danielson. I really like this, and I continue to think that Monet is just on an incredible run, and I think it's an interesting. Idea that she is virtually unbeatable in AEW, except when it comes to the world title. I think that when she finally does turn that page and wrestle that demon and become the champion, it's going to mean a lot more because of what they've done here in her world title matches.
You can kind of see a story start to develop where the desperation gets to her, right?
Yes.
She's got all these titles, but none of them fulfill her because she's not AEW Women's World Champion. And that's a story that you could tell as well. Although you're kind of putting down the other titles in some ways, but I think what you pointed out, she's 0 for 2 going for these titles. So that's a story that can be mined a little bit. I didn't love this match as much as you did. I liked it. I thought that, the 2 very distinct portions of the match, the early first part where they heavily focused on the Chris Statlander injury to the point that I thought they were going to give her an out to lose. Like, I thought that was the whole point of building this is, Statlander could have walked away, but gamely tries to finish the match and ends up losing. And in the end, she wins and she beats the unbeatable, Mercedes Moné. So it definitely feels like AEW is getting firmly behind Chris Statlander, which I think is interesting. I think Statlander probably would not be a number 1, the first woman that I would get behind to this level. So I think it's interesting that Tony Khan has picked her of all the women in AEW to put up on a pedestal, now that Toni Storm has left the spotlight at least a little bit, and Statlander kind of taking her place there in the singles division. It's an interesting choice. I think I don't hate it. That she does have some weaknesses, the promos and things like that, but I'm all for them getting behind someone new. And someone who's not maybe a 100% polished product and trying to give it a go and see how far you can get with them. I have no problem with that, giving them some big wins like this one over Mercedes Moné. So, yeah, I thought it was well done. Mercedes continues to be an in-ring star and a big win for Statlander.
Yeah, if I could snap my fingers and put Willow Nightingale in the spot instead of Chris Statlander, I would do it. I think
she was the one that I thought of. Yeah, quite frankly, like I think that she's a little bit of a different character, and maybe she's not serious enough, or maybe she doesn't have the edge enough. Even though we've seen her in some pretty brutal battles on TV, but she's the one that stands out to me. Way back when Jade Cargill was around, I argued that Willow Nightingale should have been the one to end her streak. So I'm very early adopter of getting behind Willow Nightingale. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at women who are over in the division, obviously you start with Toni Storm at the top, and then I think you take Mercedes Moné after that, and then number 3, you're probably realistically looking at Willow. I mean, she gets great reactions every time she comes out. So I would put her on the short list for a really serious and significant push. But I don't dislike Chris Statlander at all. I think she's been really good in the ring. I think that it's worth giving it a try with the other stuff and really trying to make it stick. But I think that this was a good showcase match for her, and it showed off what she does particularly well. But Mercedes eclipses her in terms of star power. She just comes off as a really really big star, and she's been a big get for AEW. I mean, what started as a sort of mediocre run has really turned into something special and something impressive. Even if carrying 13 belts around doesn't necessarily mean all that much. I think it's a cool thing that they've got going with her overall. Greg, go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree. I think having her the run in WWE gives her a leg up when she comes to AEW and is seen as a star. I think people see her as a star because, in part, what she did in WWE. They're more willing to see her as a star right away. Whereas, someone like Chris Statlander, you got to build from the ground up in the eyes of fans because they haven't seen her anywhere else. So I know there's some discussion in the chat about Mercedes' mic work. I think there was a time where it was terrible, quite frankly. I think she's gotten a little better with that in AEW. In the bad, she was bad when we were trying to figure out if she was heel or babyface. We were like, if this is a heel, it's good, but if it's a babyface, it's terrible. And it did feel like she was trying to be a babyface at times with heel mic work. And I think that's where she came up short. And now that she's full-fledged heel and she's doing this mic work, I think it comes across a little better.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I wanted to note, I made a couple of mentions of bad theme music choice. Kyle O'Reilly, Chris Statlander, I think both have pretty bad themes. I thought it was interesting. One, Hangman Adam Page did not come out to his regular theme music tonight. It was actually, if others didn't pick up on it, it didn't click with me immediately. I happened to see a comment, and then I was like, "Oh, okay, that's where I know it from." It's a song from the video game Red Dead Redemption 2. So which Page is, Page kind of has that. Page kind of has that sort of swagger that fits within the style of that old Western video game. I'm fine with them doing it as a one-off, but I hope that this isn't like a move to that full time. I think that would be a pretty big mistake. Hangman's got great theme music, crowd pops for it every time, and I thought if they thought that this was going to get a reaction because it was a known song from a video game, I just don't think enough people recognized it, and it sort of hurt the initial reaction for Hangman when he was coming out because they were expecting that theme that he's used and that works so well for him, and they just didn't get it. So I thought that was a miss. The other miss I thought was introducing a new theme for Swerve Strickland. I so much of Swerve's character is built around the call and response and that song. I think it's become one of the best theme songs in AEW, one of the best theme songs in pro wrestling. I just wouldn't have moved away from it. Maybe I'll feel, and the new theme wasn't a bad song. I mean, there was nothing, I didn't hear it and think this is not, I didn't think that this is a bad theme song. I just thought that it was not going to take off the way that his original theme did. And I don't think I would have moved away from something that has become so synonymous with him. But I didn't think like, oh, this is terrible. I just thought, do you really want to get away from what made you?
Mm-hmm. I liked Swerve's theme better than Adam Page's in terms of the new themes, but you're right. Yeah, you're right. Context matters. And if a good theme is replacing a really great theme, then the good theme looks worse than it would just standing on its own in a vacuum. So I think you have that in terms of Swerve, but we don't really know. whether or not they make it to Dynamite on Wednesday or Collision on Saturday. Tony Khan, this is one of the areas where he does listen to the fans. If you remember, he switched Mina Shirakawa's theme, and then the backlash was so great during the match that he actually switched it back for the end. So that's one of the areas where he does listen to the fans.
Yeah. Rude Dog was a fan of the theme. Definitely a differing opinion from us. Sadler was with us. He hated the theme. I didn't hate the theme, but definitely did not like it as much as the original. He did say it felt like Swerve saying, "Hey Tony, I have a new song recorded. Can I debut and promote it?" It did, feel a little bit like that. Derek just saying that the themes can help define the character, and I think with Swerve, it has done that. It's really helped define who he is and helped get him to the level that he's at. Greg, anything else that you want to add before do a quick VIP plug, and we'll do our normal thumbs up, thumbs down after. But anything else?
Yeah,
you want to throw
go
in there?
ahead and do that plug, Brandon.
All right. So it is, of course, it's a perfect time with Thanksgiving right around the corner. If you're not yet a VIP member and you want to check it out, Wade is running a VIP sale right now. Great opportunity to check out all that VIP has to offer. Go to pwtorch.com/GoVIP. The coupon code is NOV for November 2025. That saves you $9 on a full VIP subscription. So that gets you 1 month for only $3.99, which is a heck of a deal. You can also apply the discount to the larger 3 or 12-month subscription as well. I don't know how long Wade will have that code active, but it is a great opportunity to try out VIP at a discounted price at a really good time of the year, a busy time of the year for pro wrestling for sure. And let's just talk real quickly here about just the everything you get with being a VIP member. Ad-free podcasts, VIP-only podcasts. You get the newsletter archives, all the podcasts from yesteryear, the weekly PDF newsletter with back issues dating all the way back to the 1980s. Of course, the ad-free version of the PWTorch website, where you can view my report on AEW's Full Gear tonight, ad-free. That's also where you can read Greg's column ad-free and hear Greg's show, Greg Parks Out Loud, as well as a ton of other VIP exclusive podcasts, including the post-event roundtable podcast. Wade and company more than likely wrapped up recording that and have it ready to go for you on the VIP feed now, so you can get his and others' thoughts on Full Gear tonight. That gets you the Fix with Todd Martin, Everything with Rich Fan, Wade Keller Hotline. So much to offer and a great opportunity right now to get a good deal for the month of November on trying out a VIP sub if you haven't already. Greg, I've plugged your show a little bit, but go ahead and talk about it a little bit more before we sign off.
So Greg Parks Out Loud is my VIP show. It's where I read my full-page column that I do every week in the Torch newsletter out loud. I get to expand on some of the things that I wrote about, have some asides, kind of something pops into my head that maybe didn't pop into my head while I was writing it. I can go off on a tangent about that. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy getting an opportunity to go beyond the 1,500 word limit that I have when I write my full page column, because there are a lot of times where I have to kind of self edit and take things out, and it's an opportunity for me to get to talk about those as well. And so I do enjoy that. I enjoy having a VIP audio show. So I hope you will check it out.
Perfect. Greg, before we go, final thoughts on Full Gear. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle.
Yeah, thumbs slightly up, I guess, is how I would do it, especially after walking through this. There were only a couple things I didn't like, the main event finish, and then, the Young Bucks stuff was not for me. And that's, I don't think any of these were objectively bad, I guess. It's just I personally was not invested in it. I personally am not invested in Hook turning heel and that whole deal and the Young Bucks thing, as we talked about. So your mileage may vary on that. You may be super into the Elite and are interested in the Young Bucks story and the story arc and them getting back together. So That's just everything else was good, I think, or there was something to like from each match. So taking those positives away, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, talking through it, I came out on the other side of this maybe a little bit higher than I started.
Yeah, I think I
After,
felt the same way too.
yeah, I mean, it's still not a show that I loved, but I do think that it. I mean, the the sum may have been a little bit greater than its parts. So I still, I wouldn't give this a strong thumbs up by any stretch, but I think I'm probably pretty close to you, Greg. Borderline thumbs up. I mean, high thumbs in the middle, low thumbs up if you wanted to get real technical with it. Certainly not a thumbs down by any stretch. There was enough here that I really enjoyed to keep it mostly positive. But that does it for our review of Full Gear 2025. Thanks so much to our VIP members in the chat and for contributing to the conversation. I will be back next week for Survivor Series. We'll be doing the post show for Survivor Series. I don't know who will be joining me as of yet for co-host. I know it won't be Greg. I'm not gonna. I'm not going to force you back into duty that quickly.
Well, I wouldn't mind it, but I'm going on a cruise this week starting on Monday. So
that's right. Yeah.
We get back on Friday. So it would be a quick turnaround to do Survivor Series without having caught up on all of the necessary shows to have the context of what's going on.
Right. So yeah, I will be here. I will be here covering Survivor Series next Saturday. Don't know who my co-host will be, but hope you will join me for that show. Until next time, hope everyone has a great and a safe Thanksgiving. Greg, thanks so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. We'll talk to you next time. Here on Wrestling Night in America.